everybody. Welcome back to the Brando and Joe podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Ryan Ruggeberg. He received his PhD in IO psychology from Old Dominion University and currently works at Kincentric as a managing director partner. Welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining us today. We're super excited.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. The last time we got to talk to you was you actually came and talked to our class, our Hofstra does the cool thing like our internship class where we get cool people to come and talk and discuss their positions, and you got to talk to us. So kind of like what we're going to do today on this podcast. But I know Brandon and I looked at each other like, oh, I hope Brian wants to come on our podcast. He did a pretty cool job.
Happy to do it. Yeah. Not sure I will have a whole lot new than what was shared on the last one, but more than happy to always talk about IO and the career in general. So,
Well, we appreciate any bit of expertise you could share with us for us lowly students over here. But to get us started on the main content of this podcast, you have such a cool and amazing position right now at Kincentric. And Brandon and I kind of wanted to just pick your brain about how you got there, how IO prepared you, and just kind of all about what you do. So for our first question, because I know that was a lot, but for our first question of the recording, what are some of your daily tasks as a managing director and partner? I know it can be tough, but what does a day in the life look like for you?
yeah, it's a great question, and I guess I wear a lot of different hats is maybe the place to start. So a lot of different components to my role. I guess maybe starting with some of the non IO kind of responsibilities. I actually have a team of consultants, other IO psychologists reporting to me. And a big focus and a strong focus of what I do is helping to support and to develop them in their careers. So, kind of the people management side of things within my role is something that I take very seriously and is very important to me. I think it's the way to help kind of grow and groom younger talent. And I've got a range of folks from associates up to directors that report to me. Um, on the other side, I am still very involved in the application of work for clients. So do client work, and that was always important to me even as I kind of moved up in my career. I never wanted to move away from being able to do the work, right? To leverage, if you're going to get a PhD, you don't want to just go into, doing sales and people management. I wanted to be a practicing IO psychologist. And fortunately, I've had that opportunity. So I still do a lot of work related to kind of design of different projects and programs for clients, the delivery. I do a lot of executive assessment and coaching for clients, and that's some of the most rewarding work that I do. I also have responsibility for business development. So, especially as you move up in consulting, big expectation is to be able to develop business, to sell projects, to identify new clients, and kind of bring in the work. Right? We have to be able to find opportunities and close those deals. So that's a big part of what I do. And then it's sort of the client management on top of that. So maybe once you've gotten an opportunity with a new client, it's nurturing that relationship, keeping it strong, introducing others in the practice to that client, and delivering good work. Um, there's obviously some basic administrative things, all the things in consulting that you have to do, whether you're a managing director or kind of a frontline first level associate, in terms of tracking time and expenses and all that kind of thing. And then there is an expectation or an opportunity to do thought leadership, which I've really appreciated at Kincentric, is that opportunity to continue to contribute to the field, to write white papers, to do quasi experimental research, to present at SciOp. And even the role that I play at Hofstra in terms of the corporate advisory board, and an opportunity to continue to work with folks in different IO programs. So I know that's a lot, but like I said, I wear a lot of hats, and those are probably a lot of the key things that I might summarize in my job description, if you will.
So, a question that comes to mind for me, Brian, when you were talking that initially, you spoke about how you have a team of people and you're working with them. One thing that I was thinking of, are you applying like IO principles to the way that you're managing your team as well? Like, especially in that type of role, like, what do you see yourself doing there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely try to practice what I preach. And I think in general at Kincentric, we try to do that as well. So, for example, when we look to bring on new interns, we have a very rigorous selection process that follows great IO principles in terms of getting well rounded input, using psychometric assessments, doing role play simulations, and things like that to really ensure that we've got quality candidates. We have a very rigorous onboarding process to make sure people are sort of enculturated and brought up to speed. So again, kind of following best practice and IO principles. Our performance management system is really designed according to kind of the latest thinking around good performance management and talent conversations. And just me personally, I guess, in terms of my folks, really try to focus on good career development kind of things in terms of understanding their goals and aspirations, developing good individual development plans, all those kind of things. So yeah, I definitely try to practice what I preach from a people management standpoint too.
As an IO psychologist, I feel like that sounds great because you put out so many terms that like especially students will know that they hear from these classes, and you're like, oh, like now I was a practitioner and I hear about all these great things. But on the flip side, do you ever have people come in, whether maybe not come in, whether you're working at Concentric or different companies that aren't from that IO background, and if you use like these IO terms, is there like a, I don't know what the correct term would be, like a learning barrier? Like, do you ever see those sort of differences?
It's a great question, and I would say certainly from the client side, that is often the case, right? We do on occasion have sort of IO psychologists as our key client contacts, if you will, but oftentimes they're individuals with more general kind of HR backgrounds, business backgrounds, and things like that, and might be fairly unfamiliar with IO or certainly some of our terminology. So I think that is part of being a successful consultant is understanding how to put things in layman's terms, how to explain some of the science that we have, how to relate it to the business and not just some of the terminology that we might get in a textbook, for example. So, yeah, I think that is an important consideration. And certainly, even within the organization, sort of outside of our core team, which is mostly IO psychologists or with a strong background in that, it's being considered of other practice areas and things like that that might not be familiar with those terms. So I think it's understanding your audience is really a critical factor in almost any case.
Yeah, it makes me wonder like what is the experience like being somebody in a lead role with a team of mainly IO psychologists cuz not as many people get that luxury. So, how has that been for you in trying to adapt your career to that?
It it's been special, frankly, to have. I really feel blessed in the sense that I'm working with some of the best colleagues and the brightest, best talent that I've ever had an opportunity in my almost 30-year career. And it's not just because they have a foundation in IO, and some of them don't. Some of them have different sort of backgrounds in kind of HR or org effectiveness, things like that. But there's a fundamental understanding and appreciation, I think, for the basic science of IO along with the practice. I think we are all strong believers in our practice around the scientist practitioner model and really try to espouse that in all the work that we do. And I think when you've got that sort of foundation or that sort of equal thinking, it makes it easier for people to kind of get along and understand how to deliver for clients, if you will.
Brandon's brought up an interesting point about like adapting and having a whole bunch of IO psychologists work for you. It just kind of made me curious. When you have new people come work for you that are in IO psychology, and obviously you're up to date with current research and practices when you go to 10 PsyOp, um, are they bringing new IO psychology practices in that you're like, hold on, when I was a student and I started working, we weren't doing this, and now these new students are bringing this? Is it do you see like do you have to kind of like adapt almost to your these new IO psychology principles?
Absolutely. And in fact, that's one of the things that I love about kind of bringing on new talent and really try to take the perspective and honestly do. I'd probably learn as much from the people that report to me as they ever do from myself. So I'm always trying to be open to and aware of kind of what's going on in more cutting edge, research, what's new in the field and so forth. And folks that are coming right out of grad school probably have a better sense of some of that than I do. It's hard to keep up with the literature, for example, when you've got 15 clients that you're managing as well. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I not only appreciate it, I value that input and insight and even challenges sometimes. Well, that's not the way that the latest research is suggesting, and so forth. So um, one of the things we actually do in our practice that I love too is we have kind of regular all team meetings that give opportunities for people to share some of that, new thinking, best practices, latest research, and so forth. So there's a lot of sort of cross collaborative sharing of information and the latest, techniques and things like that that helps to elevate all of our skills, I think.
So Brian, like you brought up a lot of great info, talking about like people in teams and this cross pollination of information. One thing that kind of stuck out with that is like the idea for a growth mindset, which is something we've spoken to a lot on this podcast. So
Yeah.
in your experience, what do you think would be some important skills for someone to have when trying to enter a career in consulting?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I do think growth mindset, for example, is just a critical skill, whether it's consulting or almost any role these days. To have that curiosity, to have that understanding and belief that you can continue to grow and develop. That regardless of where we're at, sort of in our careers or our learning, there are always opportunities to continue to learn and grow. And I think having that kind of mindset is a critical and valuable thing. I think sort of this notion of flexibility, adaptability, learning agility, any of those kind of concepts, I think are just uber critical these days too, because of the nature of business, of consulting. It's so rapidly changing. There's so much sort of uncertainty and so many things that can change at a whim, that you need to be able to be adaptive and kind of pivot as needed to take those opportunities and be able to adjust and learn from it. Um, I think this is maybe an interesting one, but I think to be a really good consultant, you have to have a level of confidence, right? Not arrogance or hubris, but you do need to be confident in the recommendations that you're sharing. And I think for a more entry level consultant, that comes from your education, your background, right? From what you've learned in graduate school what those core IO principles are, what the science suggests about the right or best way to do things, and to be confident in supporting recommendations related to that. Some of the other skills I think beyond what I just shared include interpersonal skills, your ability to collaborate and get along well with others. It's just so critical. And whether that's clients, whether that's colleagues, you just need to have strong interpersonal skills. So while I chuckle at times, there are folks, say at PsyOp, that view themselves very much in the nerd realm of just I love the stats, I'll dig into the data, I love analytics, I don't want to talk to anybody. As a consultant, that's not going to fly. You might be able to leverage that expertise, but to really be successful, you have to have strong interpersonal and communication skills. And I think the communication skills are all aspects, from verbal, written, presentation, PowerPoint, all those kind of things are skills that you're going to need to refine and leverage. And then maybe the last one that I'd put out there is sort of the critical thinking and problem solving, right? It could be analytical, but fundamentally, we're often being asked to solve fairly complex problems or issues for clients, and being able to really think through that in an effective way and come up with solutions that again meet their needs, but also really align to best practice is critical.
Absolutely. I love the part about where you brought about the confidence in the data, because sometimes one of the best things that I feel like our field brings is that we're good with that stat side and that data side, but it's easy to get lost in those Excel spreadsheets or those R programming, whatever you're doing. And you bring up a good point about the confidence and being confident in public speaking and presentation skills. Personally, I don't work in an external field or consulting. I know Brandon could probably speak better to it, but I bet that's a very important thing. I mean, even if you're working internal, um, I wanted to know if there was certain things that you did to help build up that confidence, or I guess get rid of that imposter syndrome that I know a lot of us students can feel sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the old practice makes perfect kind of adage. It's one of those things that the more you do it and the more you get sort of positive feedback or recognition for good ideas and good solutions and approaches, it's self reinforcing. So, I think it is just a matter of taking the opportunities and doing it, sometimes even asking for those opportunities, right? If you're working in a team and somebody needs to present to a senior person or to a client, volunteer, take the opportunity to build and demonstrate those skills, and then ask for feedback. How do you think it went? What was good about it, what could have been better? And that's how we all kind of grow and develop. So, I was thinking back to, you at one point were asking a little bit about my own maybe graduate background. Any of the opportunities that I had in grad school to do something that involved a presentation was so valuable, because it really encouraged or forced you to develop a good, thoughtful presentation, and then stand up in front of your peers and faculty and present it with a sense of confidence, clarity, and perspective. That I just think those are the things that help to develop those skills over time.
Yeah, I think something great that you said, there's a lot of great things you said there, Brian, but one thing that I want to pull at was the idea of how what you're saying is getting in there and volunteering, like showing and taking that initiative, because that goes such a long way. And especially when you're young and starting off your careers, I think that's something that can be seen as very important, especially to senior leadership. And another part that I want to pull at and then ask a question about was the idea of like looking back to your like degree and when you were in school. And one thing that kind of makes me think about is like setting almost like an expectation of how you're going to act once you enter the workforce by practicing in that school like environment. And would you say that that's something that you kind of did that helped you like almost like kickstart your career and like push you forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question again, and I do think that those opportunities in graduate school, where we had certain upper level courses where you had to present, right? You had to oftentimes work in a team of colleagues. I loved that, because that's the way, there's very little just you're solely responsible for doing something. You're going to have to work in a team. So the opportunities in classes where it involved kind of team collaboration, and then sort of developing and presenting in a team situation. Those were some of the best experiences, because again, it required you to know how to collaborate how to kind of divvy up the work, divvy up the presentation, but also to to build what you're going to say and do it in a way that was not only supportive of your own contribution, but was good for the team as a whole. So all of those I think were great opportunities. I try to think back too, and this at one level you may sound, oh man, that's sick to think that was the best part, but dissertation, while it was certainly among the most challenging components in grad school, it was probably the best overall experience and growth opportunity, because it required you to leverage every bit of skill that you had gained, right? So it's the technical knowledge, it's the research, it's the statistics, it's the writing, it's the presentation, it's the confidence to do that, it's the perseverance and resilience and stick to itiveness to get through it. All of those things that allow you to get through a dissertation are things that were absolutely applicable, out in the consulting world as well.
Oh, I'll have to take your word on that one. I think that's the first time we've ever heard that, but but it sounds good to me.
Yeah, I know, and you're like, oh man, right? But I was trying to think back. I think dissertation is one of those all-encompassing kind of experiences that it either grows you or grinds you to dust. And if you survive it,
That's fair.
you're doing great. So
I really liked the part about teams, because it didn't hit me, I guess, until the master's program, I would say, because I remember in high school you would work in teams on certain projects,
right,
but like it wasn't really teamwork. It was kind of just like I'll write this like slide here. There wasn't as much collaborate, or maybe that was just my high school experience. I don't know if people can relate.
right,
um, but and then when we finally got to our graduate program, and I realized the importance of collaboration and learning from each other and really creating a project from the ground up with your team members, and how much more helpful it is when you have that good cohesive team. So I really wanted to point that out because I think it is super important.
yeah,
To finish off our recording, our podcast episode, we wanted to ask you our final question about advice. We know there's a whole bunch of biopsychology students coming into the field, and someone with your expertise. We wanted to know if you had any bits or pieces of advice for incoming students.
yeah. It's a great question again, and I guess part of it is that notion of kind of learning agility. Take opportunities wherever they present themselves to learn and grow, right? Even if it's something that you're not necessarily confident about, you've never done before, uh, take the opportunity, give it a go, be perseverant, be resilient, realize that there may be stumbles along the way, but you will learn as you go. And keeping that kind of growth mindset, that learning agility, will be just so important in whatever path you take, whether it's consulting or going into industry, academia, whatever it might be. Those are just critical skills, I think. And remember, too, as you're learning, as you take those opportunities and challenges, ask for feedback. Right? People, the people you work with, your peers, your manager, others, are often very willing to provide feedback on what's gone well or what could be better. But oftentimes we don't ask for it. And as a result, they don't give it. But that's one of the best ways we can learn. So get in the habit of saying, how do you think that went? Is there anything I could have done better? What were the best parts of what I did? What could be polished, and so forth. That's the way we can all improve. And that's one thing I would encourage folks to think about as they start a career.
Yeah, definitely. Something that there were a lot of things there again that resonated with me. I think Brian, you hit a lot of good points. If I could like make it one theme, one thing I would say is like almost be able to create your own destiny, like have control over your own career. And like when you're taking that initiative and you're learning and you're growing, or you're just trying to like ask people for feedback, like those types of things that you do could be career defining, and it could be helpful, but they're also something that you're taking it into your own hands, you're putting it into your own hands. So I think that students who are listening to this podcast, like, can probably find not only a lot of value in that, but I want to speak a little bit to the learning agility that you spoke to, Brian. As somebody who's also working in consulting, like I've found that very, very valuable, because I know sometimes I'll be given a project and I will have no idea what this project means the second I got it. And I'll know everything
Yep.
about it by the end of the week.
Yep.
And that's just like how it works every single time. But like that, and specifically related to the consulting side of what you're discussing, Brian, like I think that's a very important aspect of it. But also, like I think that can apply to anywhere you work. Sometimes things just get thrown on your desk and you got to figure it out by yourself. So we appreciate that type of advice, and I know our students will too.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. And don't be overly concerned. Just give it a go, right? Take advantage, realize that you probably can figure it out. If you're in a program, you've already shown that you're smart, you're resilient, you know how to learn. And that's fundamentally what it takes sometimes, right? And ask for help. I think that's one of the things too. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't feel like you need to struggle alone, or that you need to know everything the day that you start. The colleagues that you have, your manager and others, are 99 times out of 10, 100, going to be likely to be happy to help you if you're struggling with things. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help if you don't know something too.
No, absolutely. Being able to do everything by yourself as like a entry level analyst is a very tough task. So asking for help uh, is definitely something good to do. I
Indeed.
appreciate that advice because I don't think we hear it enough,
Yeah.
especially as like students coming into the field.
Right. Yeah.
But thank you, Brian, for joining us. We love
Thank
talking
you.
with you,
Yes.
and I'm sure our audience will love to hear this episode.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I hope it's helpful. And if there's any follow up from any of your viewers, happy to connect as well. So I wish everybody the best. And thanks again for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Put in the description.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Brian.
You bet.
So that was another fantastic episode. Selfishly, I love when we get consulting on here because it's just such a fun topic for me. And I feel like Brian had so much valuable information and has had such a valuable career for people to learn from.
No, absolutely. It is always exciting when we get people to come on and talk about consulting, especially Brian with his expertise in the field. Because, like as we said, there's just so much to do in the field of consulting. So we always get us like a little something new from the people who we interview. So especially with Brian today, like we learned so much. I loved his advice on teamwork and about ability to learn, and most importantly, like how to combat that like imposter syndrome feeling. It really resonated.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of students will be able to hear this and not only relate to it, but find things that they can focus on in their careers to help them out. And I'll give a shout out to something that he said to us online after or offline after the fact, just like the idea of networking too. It's super valuable and important, and want to make sure that students also know that that's an important way to help their careers. But I think this was awesome. We want to thank Brian again for coming on here with us. A super valuable episode, and we will definitely catch you guys next week.
See you guys next week.